You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Hey folks, Maria Varmazes here, host of N2K's T- Space Daily podcast. Today I'd like to share a fantastic podcast called The Carbon Copy. I think you'll find it as insightful as I do. 3/4 of Americans are worried about climate change. Many of us feel disempowered by the scope of the problem and disconnected from the scale of solutions. The Carbon Copy is a podcast about the technology and business forces that will help us harness those solutions. Longtime climate and energy reporter Stephen Lacey brings deep knowledge and insights. Each week, he digs into the business and technology stories around the rise of clean energy, the challenge to fossil fuels, how the global energy system is transforming in dramatic ways, and the people making it all happen. Don't miss it. Follow The Carbon Copy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Tired of cybersecurity mega conferences? MWise is different. With a focused agenda and targeted problem solving, MWise is where security's best go to get better. From September 18th through the 20th in Washington, D.C., you'll join a special community of security's sharpest minds, hear perspectives you might not get anywhere else, and reach a new level of mastery that'll prepare you for what's next. Register early and save at mwise.mandiant.com/conf23. That's mwise.mandiant.com/conf23.
A Chinese cyberespionage campaign against European governments. The Port of Nagoya closes over ransomware attack. BlackCat and SEO poisoning. LockBit seeks to extort a semiconductor manufacturer. Professionals in the cyber underworld. CISA issues a DDoS alert for U.S. companies and government agencies. Microsoft debunks claims of data theft by Anonymous Sudan. Matt O'Neill from the U.S. Secret Service speaks with Dave Bittner about sextortion. Rick Howard sits down with Michael Fuller of AWS to talk about the kill chain. And Avast releases a free decryptor for Akira. I'm Trey Hester, filling in for Dave Bittner with your CyberWire Intel briefing for Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. We are back after the Independence Day holiday, and here are a few stories we've been following. Beijing's intelligence services are currently deploying SmugX to collect against a range of targets in Europe. Checkpoint researchers describe a Chinese government cyberespionage campaign against European governments. They call it SmugX and attribute it to Red Delta, with some involvement by Mustang Panda. The campaign uses HTML smuggling to deploy a new variant of SmugX against its targets. The group's interest seems to be in Eastern Europe, but the targeted governments, which include Sweden, the United Kingdom, France, Slovakia, Hungary, and Ukraine, are not confined to that region. Ransomware continues to infest a wide range of organizations. BleepingComputer reports that just yesterday, the Port of Nagoya, Japan's busiest ocean terminal, sustained a ransomware attack against the Nagoya Port Unified Terminal System. Nikkei Asia says the issue came to light when a port employee noticed anomalies in his system. Investigations revealed the cause to be a ransomware infestation. The Port Authority is working to restore service and expects to have done so by tomorrow morning. In the meantime, most container operations at the port have been suspended. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, which remains under investigation. Familiar criminal ransomware organizations continue to find victims too. The BlackCat ransomware gang is using malvertising to trick victims into installing malicious versions of the WinSCP file transfer application, BleepingComputer reports. According to researchers at Trend Micro, quote, the infestation starts once the user searches for WinSCP download on the Bing search engine. A malicious ad for the WinSCP application is displayed above the organic search results. The ad leads to a suspicious website containing a tutorial on how to use WinSCP for automating file transfer. From this first page, the user is then redirected to a cloned download webpage for WinSCP. Once the user selects a download button, an ISO is downloaded from an infected WordPress webpage. The LockBit ransomware group has demanded $70 million in exchange for not leaking data allegedly stolen from Taiwanese chip manufacturer TSMC. TSMC told the Register that one of its third-party equipment suppliers, Kinmax, was the source of the breach. Security Week quotes TSMC as stating, quote, "At TSMC, every hardware component undergoes a series of extensive checks and adjustments, including security configurations, before being installed into TSMC's system. Upon review, the incident has not affected TSMC's business operations, nor did it compromise any of TSMC's customer information. After the incident, TSMC has immediately terminated its data exchange with a concerned supplier in accordance with the company's security protocols and standard operating procedures. TSMC remains committed to enhancing the security awareness among its suppliers and making sure they comply with security standards. The cybersecurity incident is currently under investigation that involves a law enforcement agency." End quote. Kinmax said in its own statement, quote, "The leaked content mainly consisted of system installation preparation that the company provided to our customers as default configurations. We would like to express our sincere apologies to the affected customers as the leaked information contained their names which may have caused some inconvenience." End quote. Cybercriminal gangs are increasingly operating like professional businesses, according to Melissa Bishoping, Director of Endpoint Security Research at Tanium. In an article for InfoSecurity magazine, Bishoping stated, quote, "The ransomware as a service approach is almost identical to today's modern businesses, which seek to hire the best talent across different functions. Through public-facing data leak sites, Telegram channels, or direct recruitment of targets as insider threats, cybercriminals advertise job openings, promoting pay, benefits, and other perks. In fact, the Lapsus ransomware group has been advertising job openings since November 2021, targeting employees at large technological firms such as AT&T and Verizon to lure employees to perform insider jobs in exchange for high pay, up to $20,000 a week. The landscape for cybercriminal jobs is competitive, with new ransomware groups and data leak sites popping up constantly." End quote. CISA released an alert on June 30th regarding distributed denial-of-service attacks. Quote, "CISA is aware of open-source reporting of targeted denial-of-service and distributed denial-of-service attacks against multiple organizations in multiple sectors. These attacks can cost an organization time and money and may impose reputational costs while resources and services are inaccessible." End quote. Though the alert does not point fingers at any group, it can be assumed that this is in response to the recent attacks against US and NATO industries by Russian-aligned groups. BleepingComputer assessed that the warning represented a response to Anonymous Sudan's new wave of DDoS attacks against various government and private sector organizations. Anonymous Sudan announced the attack on U.S. companies and government websites was in retaliation for announcements U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made concerning sanctions against certain parties in Sudan's ongoing civil war. Anonymous Sudan, generally regarded as a Russian front organization, on July 1st claimed in its Telegram channels to have breached Microsoft servers and stolen data belonging to some 30 million customers. Quote, "We announced that we have successfully hacked Microsoft and have access to a large database containing more than 30 million Microsoft accounts, including email and password. Price for the full database, $50,000. End quote. Microsoft says the claim is baseless, stating, quote, "At this time, our analysis of the data shows that this is not a legitimate claim and an aggregation of data." End quote. Just yesterday, Anonymous Sudan also announced an ongoing attack on Riot Games, an American video game developer for League of Legends. Anonymous Sudan has claimed that they have access to Riot's back end of League of Legends. This campaign is a continuation of attacks against American companies in response to the comments made by the Secretary of State concerning the civil war in Sudan. Riot Games would appear to be merely a US-based target of opportunity. And finally, we close with a bit of encouraging news. Avast researchers have developed a decryptor for the Akira ransomware, active in the wild since March of this year. It's available at no charge, with instructions for use on Avast's decoded site. Coming up after the break, Matt O'Neill from the U.S. Secret Service speaks with Dave Bittner about sextortion. Rick Howard sits down with Michael Fuller of AWS to talk about the kill chain. Stick around.
Struggling to secure on-prem apps with modern identity? Don't worry, you're not alone. Join industry leaders from Fortune 500 organizations to secure your apps on any cloud with any IDP, regardless of your environment's complexity. Meet Strata's identity orchestration platform, Mavericks. Say goodbye to the headaches of app refactoring and legacy tech debt. With identity orchestration, you can modernize legacy apps to use MFA or passwordless authentication in a few weeks, migrate from one IDP to another, and so much more without changing the app. No matter your IAM use case, Strata extends the value of your current identity investments. And the best part? You can try it for free today. Visit strata.io/cyberwire to share your biggest identity challenge, and they'll hook you up with a complimentary pair of AirPods Pro. Don't miss out. Visit strata.io/cyberwire. That's strata.io/cyberwire. And now, a word from our sponsor, TrueFort. TrueFort knows that cyber attacks are not devastating unless they're allowed to spread. TrueFort uses the EDR agents you already have installed to provide a clear understanding of the activity within your application environments. From containerized to legacy bare metal servers, TrueFort maps all behavior within applications to ease your enforcement of microsegmentation policies and service account protections. Learn why the world's largest enterprises trust TrueFort to give them control over lateral movement at www.truefort.com.
In another episode of our continuing series of interviews that our CyberWire colleague Rick Howard gathered at the recent AWS Reinforce conference, today, Rick speaks with Michael Fuller from AWS about the kill chain.
The CyberWire is an Amazon Web Services media partner, and in June 2023, Jen Iben, the CyberWire's senior producer, and I traveled to the magical world of Disneyland in Anaheim, California, to attend their AWS Reinforce conference and talk with senior leaders about the latest developments in securing the Amazon cloud. I got to sit down with Michael Fuller. He's the Director of Product Management External Security Services at AWS, and he's responsible for several AWS security products like GuardDuty, an IDS of sorts, Macy, a data loss protection service, Security Hub, a security configuration dashboard for your Amazon deployment, Inspector, a vulnerability management service, Detective, a SIEM, and Security Lake, a data lake for your security logs. And I asked him about one of my pet peeves in the InfoSec community, that both practitioners and vendors tend to focus on tactical, technical things, like preventing malware and exploits and vulnerabilities, and not specifically on a strategy of defeating the 300 or so known attack campaigns from the likes of Fancy Bear, Wizard Spider, and the like. I call that strategy the intrusion kill chain prevention strategy. In our discussion, you'll hear us talk about the conference main keynote speech delivered by CJ Moses, the AWS CISO. Here's Michael.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things about where we sit is that we also, customers look to us as a peer. Mm-hmm. We're also one of the largest companies operating on AWS.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it for some time. So we actually started this service team in AWS security. We were one of the only service teams that were actually within our internal security team versus, on the services side. And we did that intentionally because, our internal security team and all of Amazon security was also a customer focus of ours as being one of the biggest customers on AWS. And so that also helps us, inform what we're building. And it also allows us to remain grounded because, internally it's almost like a sibling. They're very blunt on saying, you're building something that may sound really good on paper, but this doesn't really help us.
Yeah.
So they keep us grounded on, are you really moving the ball forward in practice? And I think that helps a lot with our customers as well because they look to us on how do you guys solve this in Amazon? You guys are building on AWS. You're using the same services we're using. How did you solve this problem? Zero Trust as an example. Mm-hmm. And then we're able to share what we've done internally and our journey along that, and then what services we've developed and capabilities across AWS overall that that's informed for them to be able to kind of replicate what's been successful for us.
So we look at, other security vendors, they have intelligence teams, and the way they market themselves is they produce intelligence reports on some adversary out there. And we have the MITRE ATT&CK framework that is an open source collection of bad guy activity. But there's very little discussion about what goes on in cloud environments. I mean, they have in the MITRE ATT&CK framework, there's a section on it, but it's pretty, weak sauce, right? And now we've been in the cloud now for over a decade. I'm sure you guys are seeing adversaries that are operating in the cloud environment, but you just don't see people talking about it, their procedures. I'm wondering, do you guys plan to be public about that stuff anytime in the future?
I think you'll see more of it. I think if you look at CJ's keynote at this event, he said more this time than I've heard him say before, right? So I think we're trying to figure out ways to do it in a tasteful way where we're not looking like we're trying to market or spread fear or anything along the lines. But we do a tremendous amount internally within AWS security and through our team, and we're very collaborative in that way. We do see a lot. A lot of that gets worked into our products on behalf of customers into things like GuardDuty and other places. And you're right, we just haven't talked about it quite as much as probably some would like. And so I think you'll see more of that from us.
Well, I think there's a difference because, CJ mentioned in his keynote, there's of the cloud and in the cloud. And I don't expect you guys to talk about what's going on of the cloud internal to, what's Amazon. But the things that the customers are seeing, in the people that are operating in the cloud, I would expect we'd see those attack sequences made public. So if, like, the CyberWire got hit, we're Amazon customers, right? If we got hit, we'd like to be able to share that intelligence across and say, you should have these controls for Wizard Spider or whatever campaign that's going on. Yep. So I would love to be able to see that.
Yeah, we do. We do it internally. Like I said, we haven't been as great at marketing it, essentially. We're really focused on kind of substance and getting it in our hands of our customers. And so we do talk about it with customers directly, and we do incorporate it into the services. And I think you'll see more of us talking more publicly about it, again, in a Amazonian way.
Amazonian way. I love that. Well, thank you, sir, for coming on and explaining this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for making the trip out. We hope to see you at the next reinforce.
Please
and reInvent.
That's Rick Howard speaking with Michael Fuller of AWS.
I am pleased to welcome back to the show Matt O'Neill. He is Deputy Special Agent in Charge for Cyber with the U.S. Secret Service. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you.
I know a focus for you and your colleagues is trying to track down and prevent sextortion. It's a tough thing to talk about, but it's important. Can you unpack it for us here? When we say sextortion, what exactly are we talking about?
Yes. So in many cases, what will happen is somebody will communicate with the victim online. So bad actors will target folks on social media sites, specifically whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and engage them in conversation, and then eventually recommend them sending a photo of them, usually of something that, like their bodily parts.
So they're sparking a romance, sort of, or I guess maybe romance may be more sophisticated than it deserves to be described, right?
Yes, without a doubt. And so what'll happen is the victim will send a photo, and then almost immediately the bad actor will start extorting them for money and threatening them that if they don't provide X amount of dollars, depending on who the victim is. And again, they do their due diligence. They know generally if this person is a juvenile, how much money they probably would have, or if they're an executive, if they're married. Because again, we disclose a lot in our social media, so they're doing their own sort of open source analysis as to who their targets are. And so the extortion amount will be largely based on how much you can afford to pay. And then what will happen is the victim will send money, whether it's through a cryptocurrency exchange or whether it's through prepaid cards to the threat actor, and then the extortion continues. It doesn't just stop. And so what we're seeing is it's a very underreported crime, because when we get contacted by a victim, we will do our own investigation, and invariably we'll find evidence of not just one victim, but scores of victims. And so then we'll go through the process of trying to reach out to the victims, let them know that we're working this case as well.
Can we talk about the mindset of someone who finds themselves falling victim to this? I mean, I imagine, of course, there's embarrassment, there's fear. What's the case that you make that while you're in the midst of all this, in addition to everything you're dealing with, it's a good thing to reach out to law enforcement, folks like you and your colleagues?
So what the Secret Service agents that contact the victim will try to tell them is a few things. The first is they're not alone. There's resources through victim witness coordinators to try to help support them through these difficult times. Also, we're a global investigative organization, and we have made significant arrests overseas. And so it is not this person that is untouchable overseas. We will find them and we will work with wherever they're located, the law enforcement there to make arrests. Sextortion, to me personally, are cases that I take very personally. When I was working up in New Hampshire back in 2014, I worked with Department of Justice on one of the first sextortion cases, and the victim wound up committing suicide a few years later, largely as a result of the trauma faced during the several months of the sextortion behavior. And so wherever we've tried to get involved and engaged in these cases, that's something that the Secret Service takes very seriously. The Secret Service will work with the FBI, HSI, and any other federal partner that is engaged in these crime schemes. But it is something that affects men, women, girls, boys, all alike.
How much of this is an educational component of getting the word out, as you say, that you're not alone, but that also there's not going to be any additional shame here, right?
Right. So that is something that the Secret Service cyber fraud task forces are trying to push out to all of their local communities, that we highly encourage victims to report. They can report it through the IC3 website. They can report it to their cyber fraud task forces. They can report it to the FBI. They can report it to the local police. And we're trying to get a handle on how large this problem is. We see it somewhat anecdotally, but we also, the Secret Service has a rich history of following the money. Most of our financially motivated cyber criminals get arrested after we have followed the money, and this is no different. So when a Secret Service agent or analyst is following money in a sextortion case, they will find other victims. And so we know that the problem is a lot larger than reported.
Do you have success stories here? Is there, I think people might think that this sort of thing, goes into a black hole somewhere, but any success stories to share?
Yes. So the Secret Service investigated a bad actor in New Hampshire named Ryan Valley, who was sextorting dozens of girls throughout New England. He was subsequently charged and convicted and served several years in prison. There are other instances that arrests have been made that have not been publicly disclosed yet. But I will say with confidence, the U.S. Secret Service, we have a team in our Global Investigative Operations Center focused specifically on sextortion and working with our federal partners at both the Department of Justice and the FBI and HSI on several organized groups. And I anticipate more arrests to come shortly.
All right. Well, Matt O'Neill is Deputy Special Agent in Charge for Cyber with the U.S. Secret Service. Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Expel knows security isn't a checkbox. It should empower your business to minimize risk, identify and address threats, and grow. What's Expel's secret? It's technology and people working together to make security easy to understand, use, and continuously improve. Powered by their security operations platform, Expel offers managed detection and response, vulnerability prioritization, phishing, and threat hunting. It's security that makes sense. Learn more about Expel, hear what customers say about the visibility and fast outcomes they get, or request a free trial at expel.com/cyberwire.
And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to hear what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. Your feedback helps us ensure we're delivering the information and insights that help keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is me, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show is written by our editorial staff. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Trey Hester filling in for Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.